Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. This is the story of the billionaire who pretended to be her driver. The night rain poured hard across downtown Seattle, washing neon lights into trembling puddles on the asphalt. Inside a small 24-hour cafe, Maya Tran wiped the counter for the third time, her wrists aching, her mind spinning over unpaid bills and her mother's hospital debt. Her apron smelled faintly of espresso and burnt sugar. She checked her cracked phone screen. 11:42 p.m., still 1 hour until closing. Outside, a black sedan pulled up by the curb. Its door opened, revealing a man in a dark coat, tall, controlled, his gaze hidden under a baseball cap. Maya recognized him immediately, her quiet morning customer, the one who always tipped exactly $1 and never looked up from his coffee. Tonight, though, he looked different. He stepped closer, the rain glistening off his shoulders. "Maya," he said, his voice steady but low. "We need to talk." She blinked, confused. "Do I know you?" The man removed his cap. His sharp features caught the flickering cafe light. The driver she had shared casual chats with was now standing in a perfectly tailored suit. Ethan Cole, the CEO whose face had been on every business magazine cover last year. Maya's jaw tightened. You were my driver." "Yes," he replied quietly. "That was me." He reached into his coat, pulling out a folded document. "I need your help. I am asking you to marry me." The words hung between them, absurd, impossible. She let out a shaky laugh. "Excuse me? Is this some kind of joke?" "It is not," Ethan said firmly. "It is a contract marriage. 6 months. You will not owe anything afterward. I will pay your mother's hospital bills in full, and you can walk away free." Maya's hands froze over the countertop. She wanted to laugh again, to throw him out, but something in his eyes stopped her. Not arrogance, not pity, but a strange mix of urgency and exhaustion. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because," he said softly, "you are the only person who ever looked at me and did not see money." The hum of the coffee machines filled the silence. Outside, thunder rolled over the bay. Ethan set the contract on the counter. "You do not have to answer now. But I need to know before midnight tomorrow." Maya stared at the papers, her heart pounding. Marriage to a billionaire stranger? It sounded insane. And yet the memory of her mother coughing in that hospital room burned behind her eyes. She looked up, meeting his calm, serious gaze. "You are serious about this?" Ethan nodded once. "Completely." The rain outside thickened, pressing against the glass like the weight of a decision she could not escape. Maya closed her eyes, whispering to herself, what kind of world forces a girl to sign her life away just to save someone she loves? Ethan did not answer. He only left the contract on the counter and turned to go, his reflection fading in the rain-smeared window. When the doorbell chimed behind him, Maya realized her life had just changed forever. The following morning, Maya barely slept. The contract still lay folded on her kitchen table, the corners damp from the spill of her coffee. The rain had stopped, but the city looked the same gray, tired, indifferent. She stared at her mother's medical bills piled beside the sink, the red stamps screaming past due. Every number felt heavier than the next. Her mother's voice came from the bedroom, weak but gentle, asking if she was heading to work. Maya lied and said yes. Instead, she found herself standing in front of the tall glass building of Cole Enterprises at noon. The receptionist looked her up and down, frayed coat, messy ponytail, the look of someone out of place. "I have an appointment," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. Minutes later, she was escorted into a private office with windows that stretched across the skyline. Ethan stood near the desk, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said quietly. "You gave me a deadline," she replied. He gestured toward a leather chair. "Please, sit." She remained standing. "If I agree, what exactly happens next?" Ethan took a breath, his tone professional. "It is a legal marriage. My attorney will finalize the paperwork. You will move into my residence for appearances. 6 months, no physical obligations, no romantic expectations. In return, I will clear your mother's hospital debt and transfer funds for her ongoing care." Maya crossed her arms. "So I am your image fixer?" "No," he said calmly. "You are my partner in a contract that protects both of us." She looked down at the folder he handed her, everything meticulously typed, signed by his attorney. Her name already printed on the second page. "Why not hire an actress?" she asked. "Because I need authenticity," he said. "And you do not know how to fake kindness." The blunt honesty caught her off guard. Silence stretched between them until Maya spoke again. "What about after 6 months?" "We part ways," Ethan said. "You keep the money. I keep my company." Her throat felt dry. "And what about now? What do you want me to say?" Ethan's gaze softened for the first time. "Say yes, only if you can live with the terms." She could feel the building's air conditioning humming through the floor, cold and constant. Everything about him screamed control, precision, certainty, everything she did not have. But she remembered her mother's pale face, the hospital room's faint beeping, the nurse whispering about another unpaid day. "Fine," she whispered. "I will do it." Ethan nodded once, no smile, no triumph, only relief. "The ceremony will be private. My lawyer will contact you tonight." He extended his hand, formal, distant. Maya hesitated, then shook it. His hand was warm, steady, undeserving of her trembling fingers. "One more thing," she said before turning to leave. "Do not expect me to pretend to like you in public." His lips curved faintly. "That will not be a problem." Outside, the wind picked up again, sweeping through the plaza. Maya walked away clutching the envelope, her heart pounding as if she had signed away more than her name. Behind the glass, Ethan watched her go, wondering when a business deal had started to feel like a choice that could break him. That night, in her tiny apartment, Maya read every line of the contract again. The ink shimmered under the weak lamp. Her signature waited for her at the bottom, the blank line like a cliff edge. She took a deep breath, picked up the pen, and signed. The pen rolled off the table as she whispered, "For you, Mom." Somewhere across the city, Ethan looked out from his penthouse balcony at the same rain returning, whispering to himself that some mistakes are not accidents, they are beginnings. The courthouse was nearly empty that Friday morning. A faint smell of rain and paper filled the air as Maya stood beside Ethan in front of the officiant. Her dress was simple, off-white, borrowed from a friend. His suit was dark gray, pressed to perfection, his eyes unreadable. The ceremony lasted less than 10 minutes. No guests, no music, only the sound of a pen scratching across paper. When the officiant finally said the words, "You may now sign," Ethan's gaze flicked to her, as if checking one last time that she was sure. She was not, but she signed anyway. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cole," the officiant said. The title felt foreign in her ears. Ethan extended his arm in silence, leading her toward the exit. Outside, the drizzle had started again, misting the glass doors. A black sedan waited by the curb. The driver opened the door for them, but Ethan waved him off and took the wheel himself. The ride to his estate was quiet. The city melted into forest-lined roads, then into the gates of a sprawling mansion that looked like something from another world. Maya stared through the tinted window, feeling her stomach twist. "You live here?" she asked softly. "It is where I stay," Ethan said. The gates opened automatically, revealing manicured lawns and a fountain shaped like a pair of wings. As they entered, the housekeeper greeted them with a polite nod. Welcome home, Mr. and Mrs. Cole. Maya froze at the phrase. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He handed her a set of keys. Your room is on the west side. Dinner is at 7. She followed the housekeeper up the marble staircase. Every footstep echoed against the high ceiling. Her room was larger than her entire apartment, king-sized bed, silk curtains, and a view of the garden. Everything smelled of lavender and new money. Yet it felt empty, sterile, untouched. On the dresser lay a thin folder labeled Rules. She opened it and scanned the first page. Attend scheduled events. Maintain appearances. No unauthorized visitors. Discretion at all times. At the bottom, his signature, Ethan Cole. She laughed under her breath, half in disbelief, half in exhaustion. So this is marriage, she whispered. Hours later, she changed into a modest navy dress for dinner. The dining room table was long enough to seat 20 people, but only 2 plates were set. Ethan sat at the far end, quietly scrolling through his tablet. You can sit closer, he said without looking up. She hesitated, then took a seat a few chairs away. The food was beautifully arranged: roasted salmon, asparagus, and red wine. She barely tasted any of it. Halfway through the meal, Ethan finally looked at her. I know this arrangement is strange, he said. You do not owe me gratitude or affection. Just honesty. Honesty, she repeated. Then honestly, I do not know what to feel right now. That makes 2 of us, he replied. The clock ticked in the silence that followed. When dinner ended, Ethan stood. Tomorrow, my assistant will prepare you for the upcoming gala. It is our first appearance together. I suggest you rest. She nodded and rose to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. Maya. She turned. You did well today. She gave a small, tired smile. You mean signing my life away? I mean staying calm, he said quietly. That takes strength. That night, lying in the enormous bed, Maya stared at the ceiling, the sound of rain tapping the glass. Somewhere down the hall, Ethan worked late in his study, his light still glowing. 2 strangers under the same roof, bound by ink and circumstance. And yet, beneath the rain and silence, something had already begun to change, something neither of them was ready to name. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Cole estate, brushing the marble floors with a golden hue. Maya woke early, unsure whether to feel like a guest or a prisoner. A soft knock came at the door. A woman in a tailored gray suit entered, carrying a clipboard and a polite smile. Good morning, Mrs. Cole. I am Vivian, Mr. Cole's assistant. I will be helping you prepare for tonight's event. Maya blinked. Event? The annual charity gala. You and Mr. Cole will make your first appearance as husband and wife. The words hit harder than Maya expected. She sat at the vanity as stylists arrived with racks of gowns and boxes of jewelry that sparkled like liquid light. They moved around her in practiced silence, brushing, curling, polishing until the girl in the mirror no longer looked like the waitress from the corner cafe. When they finished, Vivian stepped back, assessing her with a nod. Perfect. Remember, smile when the cameras flash, and stand slightly behind Mr. Cole. Maya forced a laugh. Right. Because that is what wives do. Vivian hesitated, then lowered her voice. You will get used to it. Everyone does. Hours later, the mansion's main hall buzzed with activity. Ethan descended the staircase in a black tuxedo, every inch the billionaire he had always been. His eyes paused on her, surprise flickering just long enough for her to notice. You look different, he said simply. That is the point, she replied. They rode together to the hotel ballroom downtown. The closer they got, the more Maya's heart pounded. Cameras flashed as soon as they stepped out of the car. Reporters shouted questions about the sudden marriage, about her background, about the rumors. Ethan's hand found hers, firm and steady, guiding her through the chaos. Inside, chandeliers shimmered above polished marble. The air smelled of champagne and ambition. People greeted Ethan with practiced smiles, their eyes sliding toward Maya with quiet judgment. She could almost hear their thoughts. Who is she? Where did he find her? Why her? During the speeches, Maya stayed close, following the cues Vivian had drilled into her. But when a reporter cornered her near the buffet and asked how they met, the words came out before she could think. He was my driver, she said honestly. A hush rippled through the nearby crowd. The reporter's brows shot up. Your driver? Ethan turned instantly, his face unreadable. For a second, Maya thought she had ruined everything. But then he smiled genuine, effortless and slipped an arm around her shoulders. Yes, he said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. And the best one I ever had. Laughter broke the tension. Cameras clicked. The crowd relaxed. Maya stared up at him, shocked by how easily he had rescued her. When the music started again, he leaned down slightly. That was bold, he whispered. I told the truth, she whispered back. You handled it well. I was not trying to handle it. I was just being me. Exactly, he said, and for the first time, his eyes softened with something more than politeness. Later that night, as the car rolled back toward the mansion, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and silver. Maya looked out the window, her reflection caught beside his. So, she said quietly, how did I do for your first fake wife appearance? Better than you think, Ethan replied. You were real. The words lingered in the quiet hum of the car. For a man who built empires on precision, the truth had never sounded so disarming. And for Maya, the pretense of their arrangement had never felt so dangerously close to something true. The following week moved in a blur of lessons, fittings, and public appearances. Maya found herself living a life she never asked for: morning meetings with stylists, afternoon interviews she barely understood, and evenings spent pretending to be a woman she was still learning to recognize. Every time she smiled for the cameras, she wondered if they could see the exhaustion behind her eyes. Ethan remained composed, distant, but polite. He guided her through each event as if they were partners in a carefully rehearsed play. Yet sometimes, when he thought she was not looking, she caught a flicker of something softer in his expression, something almost human. One afternoon, while preparing for another corporate dinner, Maya found herself alone in the mansion's library. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with books that smelled of dust and leather. She traced a finger along the spines until she stopped at a framed photo of Ethan with a woman who shared his eyes. The name on the silver plaque read Margaret Cole. His mother. Maya turned as Ethan entered quietly. She was beautiful, Maya said. She was, he replied. She built everything you see here. I just inherited it. There was a pause, filled only by the ticking of an antique clock. You look like her when you are angry, he added, half smiling. Maya raised an eyebrow. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It is an observation. The corners of her mouth twitched despite herself. For a moment, the tension between them felt almost easy. That night, the dinner was at a downtown hotel. The ballroom shimmered with gold light, and the scent of orchids filled the air. Maya wore a deep emerald dress, chosen by Vivian, while Ethan stood beside her, shaking hands with board members and investors. As they made their rounds, one of the older executives, a man named Richard Hale, approached them with a glass of wine and a smirk. Mr. Cole, your wife is quite the surprise, he said. I never thought you would marry someone ordinary. The words sliced through the air. Maya's shoulders stiffened, but before she could respond, Ethan's tone turned icy. Ordinary is not a flaw, Richard. It is what keeps people grounded. You should try it sometime. The executive blinked, stammered an apology, and retreated into the crowd. Maya exhaled slowly. You did not have to defend me, she said quietly. Yes, I did, Ethan replied. You were right to tell the truth at the gala. The least I can do is return the favor. For the rest of the night, he stayed close, guiding her through introductions, always a step ahead of gossip or speculation. When the evening finally ended, they left through the back exit to avoid reporters. The cold air hit them like a wave. Ethan handed her his coat without a word. "Thank you," she murmured, wrapping it around her shoulders. They stood in silence for a moment, the city humming around them. Then she looked up at him. "Why did you really choose me, Ethan? Out of everyone you could have had sign that contract." He hesitated before answering. "Because you did not look at me like I was a headline. You just looked at me." The honesty in his voice startled her. For the first time, Maya saw not the billionaire or the businessman, but the man underneath, the one who looked tired of being untouchable. When they returned to the mansion, she paused at the stairs. "Good night, Mr. Cole," she said softly. "Good night, Mrs. Cole," he replied, his tone unexpectedly gentle. Upstairs, in the quiet of her room, Maya realized something unsettling. The lines of their contract were beginning to blur. Pretending was supposed to be simple. But every time Ethan spoke with that calm sincerity, every time he looked at her as if she mattered, she felt something dangerous growing, a truth that no paper agreement could contain. Days turned into weeks, and the strange rhythm of their new life began to settle like dust after a storm. Maya and Ethan continued to play their roles in public, but in private, something wordless began to shift. One night, after another long charity dinner, the mansion lost power during a thunderstorm. The hallways went dark except for the flicker of candlelight. Maya stepped out of her room, holding a candle, her hair loose over her shoulders. She found Ethan in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, trying to light the gas stove. "The generator failed," he said. "Dinner might be simpler than usual." "You cook?" she asked, half teasing. "I can try," he replied with a small smile. They found instant noodles and 2 cups, and soon steam rose between them as they sat at the kitchen counter. Rain drummed against the windows. "You know," Maya said quietly, "I used to eat this every night after work." Ethan glanced up. "Do you miss it?" "No," she said, then paused. "Maybe the simplicity of it." He nodded, looking down at the bowl. Simplicity is underrated. For a long moment, they ate in silence, the warmth of the noodles cutting through the chill. Then Maya asked softly, "Why did you never marry before?" Ethan leaned back, considering. "I came close once. But she loved the empire, not the man." "And now?" Maya pressed. "Now," he said, meeting her gaze, "I am trying to remember what it means to be a person, not a brand." The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She looked away quickly, pretending to focus on her food, but her chest felt tight. A distant rumble of thunder filled the pause. When she looked back, Ethan was watching her, not with the cold detachment she had grown used to, but with quiet curiosity. "What about you?" he asked. "Ever been in love?" Maya laughed softly. "Once. He left when my mother got sick. Said he could not handle hospitals. I learned not to expect anyone to stay." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then he was a fool." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Maya blinked, startled by his tone. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe I was naive." The storm outside grew louder, wind rattling the glass. For a second, the lights flickered back on, casting them in warm golden light. Maya saw him differently then, not the untouchable billionaire, but a man who looked tired, vulnerable, and entirely real. "You should rest," he said finally, clearing his throat. "Tomorrow will be busy." She stood, hesitating by the doorway. "Thank you for the dinner, Chef Cole." He smiled faintly. "Do not tell anyone. It will ruin my reputation." The joke was soft, but it stayed with her long after she left the kitchen. That night, in bed, Maya could still hear the rain and his low laugh echoing in her head. For the first time since the contract, she wondered what it would feel like if none of this were pretend. Down the hall, Ethan stood by the window of his study, watching the rain trail down the glass. He thought about the way she had smiled over a bowl of instant noodles, the way she made this cold house feel alive again. And for the first time in years, he felt something that frightened him more than failure: hope. The following morning brought more than sunlight. It brought a headline that shattered the fragile balance they had built. Maya woke to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly. On every screen, her name was splashed beneath the headline, "Waitress Marries Billionaire. Was it all a lie?" The article accused her of manipulating Ethan for money, claiming she had planned everything. Photos from the gala were twisted into proof, and a blurred image of her mother leaving the hospital made it worse. Maya's hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. Words like gold digger and fraud burned into her eyes. When Ethan entered the room, she turned on him with tears in her voice. "You told me this would stay private," she said. "You promised me protection." He looked genuinely shocked. "I did not leak this, Maya." "Then who did?" she demanded. He hesitated. "The board has been pushing back against my authority. Someone wants to use this to weaken me." "So this is just business to you," she said bitterly. "You get a scandal, I get humiliation." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his tone. "I will fix it." "You cannot fix this," she whispered. "Not with money. Not with lawyers." She turned away, but he caught her arm gently. "Maya, please. I need you to trust me." She shook her head. "Trust? You never even told me about the board or your enemies. How can I trust a man who keeps every truth locked away?" The pain in her voice cut deeper than anger. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, he let her go. That evening, Maya packed a small suitcase. The mansion that once felt like a cage now felt like an echo of something that had almost become home. Ethan watched her from the doorway, his eyes hollow. "You do not have to leave," he said softly. "Yes, I do," she replied. "You hired me to play a part, and I did. The show is over." She handed him her wedding ring, the one he had placed on her finger at the courthouse. "I will send the final paperwork through your lawyer." "Maya," he started, but she cut him off. "Do not," she said, her voice breaking. "If this is all for show, then let me exit gracefully." She walked past him, the sound of her footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Outside, the sky was gray again, heavy with unshed rain. Ethan stood frozen, the ring cold in his palm. For a man who had everything, he had never felt emptier. Upstairs, the portrait of his mother seemed to watch silently, as if asking him how many times he would let love slip away. He did not have an answer. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed felt heavier than any storm. Weeks passed before anyone saw Ethan Cole again. The media called it retreat, but those who knew him understood it as silence before a storm. Inside the towering boardroom of Cole Enterprises, executives whispered about scandal and control. Richard Hale, the same man who once mocked Maya, had seized the moment, pushing for Ethan's removal as CEO. "A man who cannot control his wife," Richard sneered, "cannot control a company worth billions." Ethan listened in silence as his lawyers argued back, but when the time came, he rose and spoke himself. "You are right," he said evenly. "I did fail to protect someone. But not this company." He placed a flash drive on the table. "Before you vote, you should see what integrity looks like." The screen behind him flickered to life, showing footage from a dash camera, the one from his old sedan. The video played quietly, showing Maya handing him a paper bag of pastries, smiling through exhaustion, giving him her last $2, unaware that her kindness was being recorded. "That," Ethan said, his voice steady but raw, "is the woman you tried to destroy. A woman who gave even when she had nothing. If this is what you call manipulation, then I wish every person in this building were half as corrupt." The room fell silent. Richard's smirk faded as murmurs spread. One of the senior members finally spoke. "The board retracts its motion. The vote is unnecessary." Ethan nodded once and walked out, the flash drive still glowing on the screen. Outside the building, the cold air hit his face. For the first time, he was not thinking about his empire. He was thinking about Maya, where she might be, if she was safe, if she would ever forgive him. Across the city, Maya was working in a small coffee shop, her old life quietly returning. Her mother's health had improved, but her smile was gone. The news about Ethan's defense reached her days later when a customer showed her the video on their phone. She froze, watching herself on screen. The moment she had thought forgotten, now replayed before the world. The comments beneath the video were different this time: praise, apology, admiration. People called her genuine, kind, real. She felt tears sting her eyes. That evening, she walked home through the light drizzle, her heart caught between anger and gratitude. At her doorstep, a small envelope waited. No name, just her address in neat handwriting. Inside was a simple note: "You once gave me $2 and hope. Allow me to return both." E.C. Behind it lay a check, not extravagant, not insulting, just enough to settle her mother's care and restart her small dream of owning a cafe. Maya closed her eyes, holding the paper to her chest. For the first time in weeks, she whispered his name, not with bitterness, but with a quiet ache. Somewhere in the city, Ethan stood on his balcony watching the lights flicker in the rain, wondering if redemption ever came without a cost. He had saved his company, but the one thing that mattered most had already walked away. 2 months later, the city felt different to both of them. Spring had softened the air, and the rain that once carried weight now fell like a quiet reminder of change. Maya's small coffee shop, named Open Hands, finally opened its doors on a corner street in Seattle. The walls were painted warm cream, and the scent of fresh bread and espresso filled the morning. A small framed photograph sat behind the counter, her mother smiling beside her, healthy again. The bell over the door chimed as customers came and went. Maya greeted each one with the same kindness she had always carried, but inside there was a quiet space that no amount of work could fill. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the bell rang again. She looked up and froze. Ethan Cole stood at the door, no entourage, no expensive suit, just a simple gray sweater and that familiar calm in his eyes. He approached the counter slowly. "I heard your coffee is the best in the city," he said softly. "Depends who you ask," Maya replied, her voice steady. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" He set down a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. "Returning something that never belonged to me." Inside, she found the wedding ring she had given back, the same simple band, polished and shining under the cafe lights. "I kept it," he said, "because I could not let go of what it meant. But it was never mine to keep." Maya closed the box gently. "Why show up now?" Ethan exhaled, his voice rough with honesty. "Because I was wrong. I thought control could protect me, but it only made me lose everything that mattered. I am not asking for another contract. I am asking for a chance to earn your forgiveness." The cafe was quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine. Maya studied him, searching for the man she had once known beneath the one the world had created. "You defended me when no one else would," she said. "But you also let me walk away alone." "I know," he admitted. "And I regret it every day." A long pause settled between them. Finally, she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both pain and peace. "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Cole?" "Only if you join me, Mrs. Cole," he said, the faintest trace of warmth in his tone. She hesitated, then poured 2 cups. They sat by the window as the first drops of rain began to fall outside. No grand declarations, no promises, just quiet understanding. Ethan reached into his pocket and placed a small folded receipt on the table. It was the same one she had given him months ago, the $2 tip still circled in blue ink. "I kept it," he said softly. "To remind me that kindness is worth more than pride." Maya looked down at the worn paper, her throat tightening. "You did not need to repay me," she whispered. "I did not," he replied. "I just needed to find my way back." Outside, the rain eased, and light filtered through the clouds. For the first time, neither of them felt like pretending. The story that began with a contract had finally found its truth, not in wealth, not in power, but in something real, something earned, and something that would last.